In a minute, assembling what I would call somewhat of an emergency pod. Something to discuss that's going to make waves on the internet through the next week, for sure. Ian Carroll on Joe Rogan. Once something comes on Joe Rogan, it becomes what I would call mainstream. You know, we've spoken about that, legacy media, new media. Once you hit Rogan, there's something that mainstreams you. So usually a lot of these people on the internet that I think are worth ignoring and not worth indulging, like once they're there, I kind of feel compelled to like discuss it, talk about it, vent about it. So do you know who Ian Carroll is?
No, you told me, hey, I can't believe you had Ian Carroll on. And I'm like, who?
Yeah.
What? Why?
So, you know, it goes without saying, it's like a little heartbreaking because to me, like Rogan's a hero, love everything he does, always defended him and everything of that sort. But Ian Carroll has been this character that's existed in sort of the, not woke right spaces completely, but he's one of these voices that emerged post-October 7th, peddling tons of conspiracy theories all over Twitter, deep dives, and a lot of it delving into the Rothschilds and Jewish and Israeli hands in our government, the dancing Israelis on 9/11, all of these kinds of things. Like, you know, conspiracies that get to ugly places, some that get to interesting places, but a lot of that kind of reaching for things, thinking, and I'm not here to just right now debunk things that he said, but he's just been that presence all over. And it's gotten into some ugly territory as far as I'm concerned in terms of basically a lot of implications about the deep state behind the scenes and a lot of Jewish and Israeli influence going on. That's very uncomfortable. And you're like, oh, like, what is that? It's like nasty kind of stuff. And then he recently, and like Elika Laban did a whole response to him on Twitter, basically taking down what he thought he had this whole thing uncovering AIPAC's influence and the Israeli lobby's influence, and Elika like took it down piece by piece. You know, he had some big Twitter moments where tweets of his have gone viral, responding to Elon Musk and, you know, asked a question about Israeli lobby, and he said, boom, and he gave this whole thing, and then Elika took it down. There's this concept on Twitter called getting ratioed. Do you know what that term means? Where somebody says one comment, and then somebody responds with a whole slew of information. You're like, oh, like total knockout. You open the window and got nailed on, you know, dropping truth bombs and red pills. And then Elika Laban did a response to that. But anyway, to see him on Rogan, you know, it just immediately sort of, I wouldn't, you know, legitimizes somebody in a specific way.
Is he in the same group as the other guys you've been mentioning? Like
Bill Zarian and Shields and stuff like that?
Yeah, Jake Shields.
No, adjacent.
What's the difference?
Candice reposts a lot of his stuff. They will repost a lot of his stuff. He's not out there saying as explicitly, like, hatred and anti-Semitism as directly and unapologetically as they do. And he, you know, is doing his own research, and I uncovered all these things because if you look beneath the surface and you know, he's basing it all on this sort of idea of research and not scholarship, but like really looking into these things, you know? Point being, it got me thinking a bit about like my initial reaction to it because like as we talk about
let's watch the clip for a second.
That's a good idea.
Anyone hasn't seen it. Let's watch it and pause it if you have something to say. All right.
Yeah, so here's a clip I sent you of him on Rogan, just to give an example of like the kind of conversation they had. Go ahead.
Let's see if we can do this here.
All the information that's getting disclosed, supposedly this administration, what do you have the least faith that we're going to come to
Epstein,
a conclusion?
for sure.
Epstein.
And I think it's because of Israel. I think I mean, when you really dig into Epstein, his entire network was Israel. It was clearly, like Ehud Barak was the ex-prime minister and the ex-head of Israeli intelligence. Leslie Wexner was one of the most powerful pro-Israeli philanthropists. The whole organization was Israel. So I'm not saying it was all of Israel.
It was all an intelligence gathering.
Now he's so much more careful.
He's targeting American officials and the American
Pause. Notice how he said, I'm not saying all of Israel. Like now he's on Rogan on a big stage, so he's being a little more careful than usual because he's been called out before.
Interest in those targets too. Elements in the CIA does. Certainly they had help from the CIA, and certainly they had help from these other organized intelligence operations, but you don't like, so for example, Dan Bongino, the new was he deputy director of the FBI, he recently had this clip that went all around where he said on camera that he had a source that he trusted deeply, and he's an informed guy. He was at a Fox News interview, and the source told him that Epstein was working for an intelligence agency in the Middle East, and I don't know which one, but someone in the Middle East. And to be fair, we all already knew this. We already know who he worked for. At least I think so. But I'm looking at, okay, Dan. So if this giant group of Jewish billionaires is running a sex trafficking operation targeting American politicians and business people and stuff, you think they're working with an Arab or Muslim nation in the Middle East? Like, you think that Leslie Wexner is devoting his entire life to philanthropies on behalf of Israel, but then he's
I mean, what are you giggling about?
I was giggling about the working for this entire group of Jewish, like the way he's just throwing in their ethnicity casually.
Mm-hmm.
And we can get to that. Just keep going. Keep it going.
Okay. I got something to say about that too. All right. Well,
you want to say an hour after? You're teasing the audience.
Yeah. Well, also just this idea that like these people like Leslie Wexner and Jeffrey Epstein are like somehow like much more connected to like Jews than Muslims, like as if their Jewishness was like the most important part of their identity and their like mission in this world.
Yeah. So
like, they would never work with Saudis because they're Jewish. Like.
Like this is what I'm saying. Well, let's play the whole thing because I always hate when people pause and stop. Let them process it.
For Saudi Arabia when he's doing this trafficking, right?
But if someone says that they're all working for a country in the Middle East, knowing he knows what that means, but not specifying, doesn't he kind of have to repeat it that same way?
Well, he also has to repeat it the same way because he won't get the job if he says Israel, because Israel has so much control over our government right now. And I'm not saying that all Jews are in on something. Clearly, internet. Clearly, internet. And Joe is definitely not saying that.
Definitely not.
But the Israel's government is as vulnerable to the deep state effect as the American government. But I would argue that Israel's government is way more vulnerable to it because of the people that founded Israel and the way it was founded. It was founded in a modern time, much more recently, by like it was a revolutionary founding. And I can totally sympathize with the Jewish desire to have that state. Like I get it. But because of the way that happened, the people that founded Israel were a bunch of organized crime figures in America, the Jewish mob, that were helping with money and with arms trafficking to get the guns there because they had to have guns. And it was the Rothschild banking family sending a whole bunch of money and getting the declaration in the first place. And then the people that were there, the three different organizations, the Irgun, the Lehi group, and the Haganah, those were the three like paramilitary groups that fought to found Israel, and they're like the heroes of Israel, which I understand the narrative that they're heroes. But when Israel was officially founded, they officially designated Irgun and Lehi as terrorist organizations because they had been bombing civilians. They'd been bombing British civilians. The first official act of terror before they changed the definition was the bombing of the King David Hotel, where these terrorists, these Lehi and Irgun terrorists, a bunch of different groups, the guy who planned that bombing later became the prime minister of Israel. They were bombing civilians. And like, so when those are the groups that are fighting to found that nation, even if all the Jews there are wonderful people, the leadership is inherently composed of these people that have been deeply corrupt for all time. And so you get this fertile ground for this kind of deep state effect to take power. And when you start to research the heads of state of Israel over history, you realize that a bunch of them were in those groups doing those terrorist acts and have done a bunch of dark stuff because those were the people that were at the top of that military organization. Like those terrorist organizations reformed to form the IDF.
And what's interesting is you can talk about this now, post October 7th,
it opened wide open.
Post Gaza.
You want to know a funny story? Actually, I didn't know shit about it, and I started doing 9/11.
I didn't know shit about it. I've just learned about all these things in the last 15 months. Yeah. He just admitted something he doesn't even realize he admitted. And also there's a lot of things to unpack. And then the very last line is troubling where he talks
I want to go to that also. Okay. Let's listen to that and then
that the state of the Israeli influence that sustained them for so long, that was essential to them surviving this long, I think that it has grown cancerous to the Jewish faith in general. Ian is the perfect example of this. Jeffrey Epstein was the world's most prolific and evil sex trafficker that we know of so far, ever. And he very clearly was a Jewish organization of Jewish people working on behalf of Israel and other groups. And so that's a dark stain on Israel and on the Jewish people if you own it.
There you go. A dark, and I'm not implicating all Jews. That is a dark stain on the Jewish people if you own it. A couple of things. I asked myself in watching this clip and watching his stuff over time, now that he's like been platformed on Rogan, right? And Rogan's always been tempted for conspiratorial conversations, but why are we so afraid?
That's an understatement.
Why are we? I mean, this is like the topics he likes, but why are we so afraid of false ideas? In other words, if somebody's out there spewing bullshit and it's nonsense, so just explain why it is. The big argument is people personally attack these people. If somebody got up there, first of all, and was like, gravity's not real. Now, you can ignore them unless they get really, really popular saying that, and then it's pretty easy to refute. So you just refute it. What's the big deal? the difference is, in this case, first of all, saying gravity is not real doesn't really cause direct harm to a specific group of people that historically have been harmed by these false narratives and ideas for centuries. That's one thing. The other thing is the way he sneaks in his falsehoods and sophistry and jumping to conclusions and connecting things is much more sneaky than just making one singular false statement or claim. You know, he's like, and these people deeply corrupted are just like there for all time. There for all time. Things like that. Then he says, and I'm not talking about the Jewish people, but he says the way it's like the Jewish faith. He doesn't know what the Jewish faith is or anything much about it. And then Jeffrey Epstein, if a stain on the Jewish community, you have to fix that. You have to own it. Now, in most cases, I also ask myself this same question. Other types of conspiratorial conversations, they don't bother me. I'm trying to like check my own biases here and sensitivities, right? Somebody's talking about Hillary Clinton, the Clintons, Pizzagate, the corruption of this government or that, or this entity or that, moon landing kind of fun stuff. Like that doesn't disturb me in the way this would. Now, obviously I'm Jewish, bias sensitive, but at the same time, nobody's talking about the Hillary Clinton scandal in the context of Baptists because she's a Baptist. That doesn't come up. Her nationality, ethnicity, community doesn't come up. But for some reason, when we talk about a bad apple, a bad person like Jeffrey Epstein or Madoff or whoever, there's always this temptation in these conversations with conspiracy to implicate the Jews. Always. And that's the difference here in this type of conspiratorial talk when you're talking about the Rothschilds, the Jews, and, you know, these Jewish, like, they make these claims and implicate the Jews and this grand conspiracy that involves all of us and implicates all of us in some way. And just saying every once in a while, and I'm not talking about all of them, but then talking about all of them or talking about something bigger than the individual bad actors and nefarious people involved, it gets so disturbing. And we see where this goes historically. So I think those are the differences. I'm trying to check myself because at the end of the day, if it's a stupid idea, it's a stupid idea. Just refute it. But you see where it gets so sneaky and sophistry is like finding its way in and just drawing these mass conclusions, not based on anything. But I looked into this stuff. When you look into this stuff,
yeah,
you know,
and
talk to me.
Joe was being particularly, I thought, not pushbacky.
Mm-hmm.
He's especially when it comes to conspiracy theories, he's usually pushes back really hard and like makes people prove every single
claim
part in their line of thought.
Mm-hmm.
And the part, and also just the part he said about after October 7th, now you can talk about this stuff because of Gaza. That was kind of like not intuitive. You would have thought like after October 7th, you can't talk about this, but like because of what's coming out of Gaza, I guess from his perspective, it makes it okay.
He's saying the world has turned
surprising
because the world has turned on Israel.
Right. Which I guess is just always like uncomfortable to hear. I hear what you're saying. He's connecting these Jews back to Israel. Which is why then he allows himself to connect it to all the Jewish people. It's not just because they're Jews; it's because they're Jews who are working with Israel. That connects it back to the Jewish people. I think what most people don't understand, and it's something we tried to get to with Dara Horn in 2 episodes ago, and I'm not sure we really got there with her, but it's that why the criticism of Israel is 99.9% of the time inherently anti-Semitic. I think that the connection that most people don't make when they listen to a guy like this talk is like yes, there are issues with Israel, and there might have been issues with the founding of Israel and the people who founded Israel. But why is saying what does that have anything to do with anti-Semitism? When I say that, why is that anti-Semitic? And I think most people can't give you a good answer to it. I think Dara Horn can, but she didn't quite explain with us. She does it much better in her book than she did in person with us. I mean, but what do you say to that when someone says, like, why can't I criticize Israel? He's right. The Lehi and Irgun, they were doing terrorist acts. I have more to say about that. And one of them did become the prime minister. But why is being anti-Israel anti-Semitic?
Well, a couple of things to respond to there. There were paramilitary groups. They did bomb the King David. That's a known historical fact. They also let them know in advance that it was happening. And the King David was the military headquarters of the British. It wasn't
Right.
bombing British civilians. The
difference-
reason they formed was because the Jews were being slaughtered by Arabs and not getting any kind of protection. So they were forming their own paramilitary groups and fighting off the British, who were not protecting them and siding with the Arabs. There's a bigger story there, and that's a fine conversation to have.
Well,
but then he takes this.
Let me add this in also, and the target of their terrorism was never civilians; it was always military.
Right.
That's a big difference.
Yes, and but those are all things you could like hash out in a civil conversation. That's fine. My point is, he does this leap where he's like, it was all founded by this stuff, and then Israel for all time is deeply corrupted and like not to be trusted or whatever. He's like, not the people, because he's trying to make himself out to be like a good guy and all these good people who live there. There's nothing unique about that. Nation states being founded in conflict, in war, in people seeking power. Like, there is nothing unique about Israel, but there's something unique about the spotlighting of it and the scrutiny of it over any other state or country that's ever existed.
Right. What would you call the Boston Tea Party? Like, I mean, if you want to talk about nations found through terrorism, you can talk, and then making them presidents, you can talk about America. He's
like making it out to seem like big bombshell, like there was all this conflict and violence at the founding of a nation state in turmoil in a part of the world where people were founding states and just at will drawing borders. It's like they did it's like the whole point is you're uniquely focusing on this issue, acting like it's unique or something, and a lot of it is about being compared to what? So this, like, I don't know.
I would add also, if you can replace the word Israel with Jew in everything you say, it's the source of it is probably an anti-Semitic trope, not like a fully fleshed out intellectual idea.
And just that somehow they're all interconnected to this broader amorphous thing that we're not seeing, and ensuing that suspicion about like, it plays into the trope of the Jews behind the scenes controlling things, controlling our government, the Jewish state doing so. America's got spies in every country. Every country's got spies here. There are intelligence agencies doing work everywhere. And yet, for some reason, this one rubs you the wrong way and is worth spotlighting and scrutinizing and criticizing disproportionately. When you're acting like it's like that's the whole thing that I think is standing out, where they're painting this picture as if there's this unique, sneaky element in our society that no one's talking about, And I feel like you could do this exercise with any nation state that has an intelligence apparatus, with any nation state if you explore its founding and some of the leaders, like the United States leaders. No one talks about this, Michael, but they literally owned slaves. These were literal slave owners that were defending slavery at the founding of this country. Like you can spin everything to be presented as if it's some conspiracy or some bombshell uncovering, when, and maybe also there's some responsibility lies with people being too reactionary to any criticism and making it seem like there's some, and getting the thing is, I think when you present these ideas with this amorphous sort of sophistry of like throwing in every once in a while, saying a few things and then throwing something in, like, and this is what it's all tied to, like this became corrupted for all time. It starts to just sow this suspicion in people. And had there never been a Holocaust or pogroms or deep-seated histories of anti-Semitism leading to violence against Jews, you might be able to shrug it off. But you're just like, the antennas go up, because this is what he's not realizing is the cycle of history of anti-Semitism. Like, do you know what you sound like? It's like literally an echo of history.
Yeah. I think Blake Flayton, Blake Flayton? He said really well, the greatest innovation to anti-Semitism in the last 100 years was replacing Jew with Zionist, which I see in our comments all the time.
Yeah.
But this guy also, he found a new way to talk about to make a very, very old argument, just replacing Jew with Israel.
Now, do you think there's something merit in like somebody sitting, like, it'd be nice to see somebody push back, because I don't expect Joe to be able to.
Yeah, but nah, I don't. I mean, I've never given Joe a pass on anything, especially with the COVID stuff. Like I've always been hard on him
with the COVID stuff. You mean having people on?
Yeah, just his no. In terms of his responsibilities when he platforms people like this, You're saying you don't expect him to push back? Like, I very much do expect him to push back, and like
only to the extent of, can you explain that further? In other words, I don't expect Joe to have the arsenal of a counterfactual to what the guy is saying, other than to indulge and listen.
Sure.
And I think maybe
I
Joe actually.
I think he should if he's going to have this guy on.
That's a moral judgment. I'm just talking about. I don't expect him to have that, to offer that.
But he could at least he is able at least to find holes in logic and reason and push and poke at them.
Right. But I think maybe there's a temptation there because he likes this kind of stories, these kinds of things. I
think so too.
I don't think it's coming from a bad place, because I will give him a pass on that. Like, his intentions are not bad. Like, I just don't honestly believe it.
I don't think they're bad either. I think he seems to me as someone who watches a lot of them genuinely disturbed by what he's seen in Gaza, which is fair.
Yeah.
I mean, if Joe Rogan after October 7th decided to be pro-Palestinian, anti-Zionist, we would have had a much bigger problem on our hands. Like he's been fine.
Yeah, totally.
Exactly.
So what I mean is
he wasn't fine. So
I mean is I wouldn't expect Joe to give any sort of satisfying rebuttals to what's going on. But I'm curious if this warrants. I'm curious if this kind of thing warrants that, because a lot of times eventually, like, there's these phrases like, they'll call you anti-Semitic, but they'll never say you're wrong. The new line from the anti-Semites now is that, and like, to be honest, I saw like Cam Higbee, as somebody I follow on Twitter and I've met in person, like, do a final response to the USS Liberty, like, conspiracy that everyone's like, ask them about the USS Liberty. And he gave a response, and I was
what's that conspiracy?
The USS Liberty?
I don't know.
In like I think it was in the 60s or the 70s. I could be getting it wrong. Let me look it up. Jamie, look it up. You don't know the USS Liberty? You don't spend enough time on anti-Semitic Twitter.
I really don't.
It's quite an awful place. USS Liberty, I think it was during the USS Liberty was an American ship that was attacked by, that claim was attacked by Israel during 1967. That Israel attacked. You didn't hear the story about the alleged Israel was a United States Technical Research Ship, USS Liberty, was attacked by the Israeli Air Force, killing, and it was seen as explained as a mistake by the Israeli military as friendly fire, or that. And Cam Higbee did a great takedown video explaining all these like questions that anti-Semites try to point to. He's like, there was an order in that part of in the waters to have nobody going there. They didn't know who it was when they approached, and there was like there were reports of hostile ships in the region. It was 6-day war. It was like 1967. So a U.S. military ship was shot. That was shot down by Israeli Air Force. That was the story, and then they put it to rest, or they did an investigation, and then I don't know we could talk about the details of it, but the point is Cam Higbee did a really good video on it, because a lot of times people are just like responding with that's anti-Semitism, which is true, and people's motivations are anti-Semitic, but then sometimes it's nice to just like let the ideas stand on their own.
What value do you think it would have for someone to take accountability of, yes, Lechin Irgun, we're a terrorist organization in some sense, and like take accountability for all the ways that this founding of the state was messed up, and instead of the usual kind of Hasbara narrative,
right?
What value do you think there is there?
Not much, even though for me there's value. Like Benny Morris does a good job explaining, like, some of the early Zionist leaders were part of Lehi in the beginning, but Lehi was 300 members, and most of the Zionists at the time were in the thousands of other parties that didn't agree with what they were doing. They were fringe.
No, but I'm saying not doing that. Being like, yes, they did blow up the King David Hotel.
But that's a historical fact. We don't ignore that fact. Maybe they don't talk about, like some people don't talk, but everybody knows that happened. Nobody denies that.
Mm-hmm. I know, but I'm saying would the conversation be easier if that was?
Do you think the hostility towards Israel rests on those things?
The answer to my question is no. I don't think that would change anything, because I don't think that's really where the hostility comes from.
I think it's good for people who are like advocating for Israel and its legitimacy and defending it to know, call balls and strikes, scars and all, but also understand the context of like, it's not unique, and like that's okay to like concede certain things. Like when I watched Benny Morris and Destiny debating, I watched the whole thing. I had a 15-hour flight. I watched 4 hours of
Oh wow, you did it.
Yeah, Benny, Destiny versus Norman Finkelstein and this other guy. Like Benny was able to make certain concessions that not your typical Hasbara advocate would, and it's fine. He was like, yeah, that's somewhat true, yes, but at the same, like he just knew the history. He knows the all of it, so he's able to kind of concede like. For a period of time, yes, Zionists had diaries at the time where they wrote certain things, but at the end of the day, they made certain compromises where they didn't want to displace the native. Some people had said that maybe we're going to have to. Like people wrote diaries, and you could pull out statements from a Ben Gurion excerpt or a Herzl expert. He wrote it in a diary. It's there. People had shared. At the time of the Zionist movement, there were different factions arguing about different ways to establish the state. And so, they look at it as representative of the whole thing, and that's just not what happened. Look at the actions of the movements themselves, And so, like, to make those concessions, as you've said before, it's, like, healthy and gives the arguments more integrity and makes people feel more secure in their position. I think it helps the pro-Israel side. It doesn't help the anti-Israel side. It doesn't move them.
I don't think so either. I was thinking today about if, that the plan to move to Uganda instead of Israel or Palestine.
Yeah.
Like if that had gone through and the Jewish homeland was in Uganda somewhere, like how big of a problem that would be. Like it doesn't matter where it was, wherever it was gonna be was gonna become a problem for everybody.
Right.
And just like all the African nations just like all of a sudden having a big
You think
problem.
There wasn't anybody in Uganda?
Taken.
You think there wasn't anybody in Uganda at the time?
No, I think it was. I think it was an empty piece of land, but even then, I'm sure it would be a problem.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, just the fact that Israel gets the scrutiny it gets disproportionately when every other country has comparable foundings. It's as legitimate as any other in the modern context. It tells you everything you need to know, but we know that.
So,
but anyway, I just to go my back and forth on these things where like you're like, ugh.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, just to indulge with this kind of stuff where you're just like, I don't know. It's disturbing in a different way than other conspiratorial topics are because you're implicating a whole population of people, a whole race, a whole religion of people. It's like this idea of like collectivizing all of this stuff as part of this Jewish question. And that's very much a part of it, as much as he wants to say. He said something also in the conversation like, now look, I'm not saying October 7th was a good thing. Oh, well, thank you for that brave statement. Think about how gross of a statement. I'm not saying October 7th was a good thing.
Yeah.
Oh, that means that what you're saying maybe would give me the implication that you do. It's like, wow. Like that's what it takes. That's your stance. I'm not saying it was a good thing.
Yeah. My least favorite part of the entire thing is when he goes, and the real reason I care is because this is bad for the Jewish faith.
Does he say that? Yeah.
Yeah. He goes, yeah, like, this is such a stain on the Jewish people, and that's truly what I care about.
Yeah, that's what people say too. And I'm like,
I hate
you
that
just
so
gave
much.
your whole game away. You just gave your whole game away with that statement. You're saying, I'm not talking about all Jewish people, and yet somehow we have to own it.
Mm-hmm.
Those are two contradictory ideas. If we have to own it, then you're implicating all of us as being culpable. And he said those things in the same paragraph. And if you just pay attention to this amorphous, sloppy kind of language and thinking, you catch those moments where you're like, whoa, what was that little jump over there? Whereas you wouldn't say any other type, Neil Armstrong and the moon, and this is what's been going on. And Neil Armstrong was a Christian, and we all know that he was part of this church. And why did they don't stretch and make those connections to implicate anyone who shares the same religion or as Hillary Clinton or Neil Armstrong. They focus on, meaning if he just did a thing about Netanyahu or just did a thing about Ehud Barak or Epstein, if he wanted to profile certain people and talk about their corruption, I think that's kind of fair and it doesn't disturb me. But he doesn't.
Well, he said he goes from bad actors like Epstein to the leadership of the state of Israel, and then for whatever reason doesn't stop there.
And then goes to organizations and families and the tribe.
I think it's fair to criticize the government of Israel and the founding of the state and all that. And if that's where it stopped, I think it would actually be pretty interesting conversation about. I don't know what the Rothschilds did to fund the state. I don't know about the weapon, how all the weapons got there for the Independence War. Like, it's an interesting conversation to have if you can have it without then implicating every single Jew.
Yeah, and also when he goes, and they're not going to do with Saudi Arabia. There's like, that's what Jews do. They all just like work together. Like when he said that statement, it's like they're not going to go to like Arab countries. Like if you're going to all work together because that's what oh, why are we all going to work together? Because that's what the Jews
it's very lazy. It's very lazy thinking.
And he's making a brand on being so precise and researched, and then there's so many leaps and bounds.
What does this do to your relationship to Joe Rogan?
Not that much. Like, I sort of get it that it could happen. It's disappointing to see it go to that like level of platform and stuff. But at the same time, it forces, I think, those the rational minds to contend with it. It's a little bit disappointing that Joe Rogan didn't see it that way and saw this guy as worth talking to, but he did. And so like, this is the marketplace in the battle of ideas where some bad ideas are getting high up there, I think. And like, I don't necessarily blame Joe for that, even though maybe I'm just like, I'm a fan. So it's harder for me to hold his foot to the fire. And like, he doesn't have the same perspective I do or sensitivity to like what's been going on with the Jews and the Jewish community and the history. So like a profoundly curious conversationalist with the biggest platform in the world, like maybe I can, like, if you're in the medical field, and I did not side with the COVID people who were like hating him for talking to Peter McCullough and all these people, right? But if, let's say you're in the medical field and to you as a doctor, all the crazy stuff this guy has said, like as a doctor from a medical perspective, and now he's on Rogan. That's us on the Jewish side, knowing all the stuff that this guy has said, tying AIPAC into all this nonsense and whatever. And now he's on Rogan. But Rogan doesn't know that, and he doesn't know Peter McCullough's history of medical statements that may or may not be true. Right. So I supported him talking to Peter McCullough. So my response is similar. I'm not going to demonize the doctors who were speaking out against COVID on Rogan's show. Those arguments kind of appealed to me. And if you're a doctor that hates it, if it's gotten to that point and his ideas are sort of winning in the marketplace or finding resonance, you have to challenge it and just like challenge it. Like go on Rogan next week, and that's what Rogan tried to do. Yeah. Like tried to have
Sanjay Gupta, right?
Yeah, Gupta. He offered other people on to come and say like,
Gupta.
what was wrong with what was said? And he's always been willing to do that because every time he's had somebody on who was like harsh on Israel, then he had Coleman Hughes on to like give it that other perspective.
Yeah.
So what can I tell you? It just is what it is in that way. I did initially. I was a little bit like, oh, really? Yeah. Come on.
I don't know how long ago was it? Who knows? 6, 7 months, 8 months ago, when like PPD and Candace, when Candace had sort of got fired from the Daily Wire, and like this type of stuff, these kind of ideas getting attention in the mainstream worried me a lot more. For whatever reason, it feels like Candace lost a little bit. I don't know. How do you feel about that? Like, I feel like she has not quite broken through the mainstream in a way that it felt like she might have.
No, remember what I said? I didn't think it would happen. I had said like it was going to drift off.
You didn't think it would, and now with perspective, I mean, where things are now, you think you were right?
I think I was right. Yeah, I think during the whole Kanye fiasco, she's busy covering Blake Lively and Ryan Reynolds, like, and ignoring all the Kanye swastika stuff because what's she going to say about that? She's had friendly podcasts with him and released them proudly, and all of a sudden he does that, and. Like, I just think it's drifting further and further into oblivion, into irrelevance. It's just like what's been happening into a deeper, darker corner of the internet. Now, some people are trying to dig their way out of it. Did you see Andrew Tate on PBD? Okay, so he was on PBD, and I have what to say about that. But I noticed one part that was interesting. Where I'm going to talk about this for a second, the Jewish question, because a lot of people have been asking me about this, and I get criticized about this, even in my own circles. So he starts to dig his way out of the dark corner of the internet in some capacity because he starts to say, look, there's no question that there are some people online that blame the Jews for everything. That's bullshit. That's pathetic. Everything. They're like, oh, the weather outside is bad. I blame the Jews. Oh, I can't get a woman. I can't get a girl. I blame the Jews. No, you can't do it because your arms are flimsy and thin. You think the Jews are responsible because you won't go to the gym and work out? He starts going off on like these people who are pathetic that blame the Jews for everything. And it's like, oh, now he's like, you see, Andrew Tate is trying to distinguish himself from all these people he's been in Twitter spaces with. He's like, I know them personally. They blame the Jews for everything. It's pathetic, And I find, am I agreeing with Andrew Tate for a second? Because I'm like, he's just trying to dig his way back to like the Overton window of like, you realize where you ended up with all that stuff, with all those ideas. You're sitting, and your own brother is sitting there like blaming Jews for everything or these grand Jewish conspiracies. There's an episode with Candace where he was doing that. But he was in these Twitter spaces with Balzarian, Myron Gaines, all these people, and he's trying to say that's pathetic. But I think it's fair. Why can't we ask? And then he starts saying, now I'm talking about the Israel lobby and Israeli government's influence on ours. We should be able to ask those questions. But blaming Jews for everything like these people tend to do is so pathetic. And I'm like, that's him trying to dig his way out, So that's sort of like it goes so far, and these people find themselves like, what am I doing in here? Like with these morons who just blame, who have like the lowest resolution arguments.
Right.
He's sort of trying to dig his way back a little bit. I haven't heard Candace talk like that way, but it feels like that's what's been happening, siphoning herself off into further and further corners of an isolated internet space that's full of raging anti-Semites and resentful, bitter people,
Right.
or often childless, unmarried, pathetic men. So
that's a pleasant image. It's
if
nice.
you follow it, I'm in that. I've been making fun of them on my Twitter, like the Jake Shields, the Dan Balzarians. I've been
and that's what I think will happen
with.
Yeah, that's what I thought would happen with most of these people. Also, actually, I take that back. I didn't think so, and now I think I've changed my mind on that.
No, but this guy Ian Carroll kind of pushes it back the other way, where I'm like, he has like, it's also possible that like. Look, in the case of, I know how sometimes these things work. Rogan comes across one video this guy did and goes, this was awesome. Like a reel, like about a book or something that he said you got to read. And he looked into this. He's like, I love the way this guy's like, whatever, let's have him on. He's going to be in Austin. Why don't you come on by? We'll talk conspiracy. And doesn't do a full deep dive on every little thing he said that may have been problematic. Oftentimes these bookings are like, can be that casual. So as far as accountability, I have to just contend with the fact that this guy's there saying his ideas, and you have to contend with him.
I think at the end of the day, he's an adult and he's accountable, like for putting it out, like whether or not that means you don't want to be a fan or whatever it is. I don't like how people infantilize him sometimes. Like he's the most powerful person in media.
Yeah, I'm not infantilizing. I'm just saying I know how these things go, and you could say that that's a sloppy way to book people, or that's not.
Yeah, but he's responsible for it.
It's not a responsible way to do it.
I'm not saying sloppy. I'm just saying he's accountable for it.
No,
I'm not saying sloppy or.
I'm saying maybe the worst thing I could say is it's a little irresponsible, knowing how big of a platform.
That's the worst thing you could say.
Because about Rogan as an indictment.
Yeah, that's the worst thing you can say. It was a sloppy booking.
Is that it's an irresponsible thing to do.
Yeah. Okay. Fine.
That's what I'm saying. That's the worst thing I could say, because I don't think his intentions are bad. I know he's curious and he doesn't think too much about how big his platform is. He just wants to do what he wants to do, and he can. And so I'm less like incensed or enraged about that. It's a little disappointing that it happened. But if he's going to book in that fashion or not look too deep into people and just want to talk to whoever, then these kind of things will get through and it's going to happen. So like, I don't disagree with you about accountability and all those things, but I sense that that's how he approaches the show.
I've heard from other people who have tried to get on his show that it's a very long process.
It could
where
be.
He'll talk to people for years before he has them on. I don't know. So who knows?
Both could be true, or maybe he told them that.
It could be too.
He tried to get on, because I've also heard he has said like, "Oh, I just if I'm into it, like come on in." Like,
he says stuff. I don't know either.
I don't know. I can't know how it goes behind the scenes, but it happens. So you got to deal with it, and I guess it would be different if it was Balzarian, where it's very easy to see. Well, Balzarian's been on the show actually years ago.
The worrying thing is that he has his finger on the pulse of what people want to hear, and so if he intuits that this is what people want to hear, that's a little bit worrying.
Mm-hmm.
The same way with COVID. Like, was everyone on a show right about COVID? like probably not, but directionally he got it right. Like that's what the country wanted to hear at that time, and like it has aged very, very well.
Sure,
His entire stance on COVID.
You don't think Rogan's motivated by what he's interested in and not what the people want to hear?
I think what he's interested in is what people want to hear, and that's why he's a star. He's an artist in that way. That's what great conversational whatever. That's what great interview shows can do. And so if he intuits, hey, this is a cool idea, it's a little bit.
Oh, you're saying if these ideas, that's what I'm saying. If it's
these
catching
ideas appeal to him right now,
and they're catching a resonant vibe, then I have to contend with that fact. Right. Just like when he said about Gaza, like, I mean, it looks like a genocide when he said that, and a lot of pro-Israel folks were like trying to come at him for that. I'm like, look, Rogan's reflecting a perception in the culture that needs correcting, not Rogan needing discipline. Like, that's ridiculous.
Right.
Because if he's coming from a genuine place, if he's perceiving in that way, then the perception is there. So correct the perception, which is, I think, what Coleman did the very next week. So I think people have to make a distinction between that and those who have really bad intention.
And then contrast that. We'll end on this with the tweet that Trump put out tonight.
Yes.
Which was, Shalom Hamas means hello and goodbye. You can
share your screen.
Let's see if I can do it. I'll just get the beginning part of it.
Yeah.
Shalom Hamas means hello and goodbye. You can choose. Release all hostages now, not later. Immediately return all the dead bodies of the people you murdered, or it is over for you. Only sick and twisted people keep bodies, and you're sick and twisted.
Keep going. Show more. Can you show more?
Yeah, hold on. I got it up on X. Give me a second.
Yeah.
I'm sending Israel everything it needs to finish the job. Not a single Hamas member will be safe if you don't do as I say. I have just met with your former hostages whose lives you have destroyed. I feel like they're reading this and being like, what? My life's not destroyed. Fine. This is your last warning. Or like, my life is destroyed? This is your last warning. For the leadership, now is the time to leave Gaza while you still have a chance. Also, to the people of Gaza, a beautiful future awaits. But not if you hold hostages. If you do, you're dead. Make a smart decision. Release the hostages now, or they will be hell to pay later. And then he signs it, President Donald J. Trump, even though it's from his Twitter account.
We have a president who is a comment section. He is the embodiment of the comment section with the capital letters and the non-caps. Dead. Like when you read comments on a YouTube video, that's Trump's style, and I freaking love it. In this, it's you can't argue with the truth, man.
I wonder what he means though, because he said that before, and it hasn't quite panned out.
Every time he says it, more hostages come home.
Is that the play?
I think he met with hostages today.
Yeah.
In the White House, which he did. Noah Argamani and a lot of them were there, and he met with them and heard their stories probably in detail, and then sent that tweet. So
it's got to feel good as a hostage to have been kept a hostage and then be in the Oval Office and have the President of the United States tweet that out.
Yeah, and they had a video of him. They had a video of him talking to all of them. He's like, horrible stories he said to them, and
crazy.
He says that, and I just the language it's so unpresidential in the best way. Like, this is the moral clarity we need. Like, you're sick and twisted. We're working with both parties to negotiate a ceasefire and release of course, all that crap is a sign of weakness in this part of the world, and they smell that. And this, they don't. Now the question is what happens, but it's a great posture to me.
Yeah, I agree.
It's precise. It's
effective.
It's clear. It's effective. So why were you concerned about it? Is it any different than anything else he said before, or is it just more?
No, I don't know. I just want to talk about it. It's exciting to see. No, well, I guess the downside is when you keep saying this is your last chance, and it's not what that does.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess we'll see.
Right. Yeah, I don't know. I'm hoping it is as effective as I expect it to be. But I just remember the last time he took a firm stance, a lot of hostages people came home. So Yeah. There's that. Did you see the Zylensky press conference? We're going back a little bit. Did you watch that?
Yeah, I saw it. Yeah.
Did you watch the whole thing?
I did.
Right, just to see how it turned all of a sudden.
Yeah.
I didn't see it as like, it still kind of jumped. Like Trump saw like JD going for it. He's like, yeah, I'm going to pile on. This looks good. But yeah, I sort of get it.
I was wondering what was going through JD's mind, like why he decided that was a good idea. Like, I wonder if Trump was like, JD, I love it when you have my back, or something, or like, I need a fighter.
Yeah, no,
and he was like, here's my opportunity.
There's a moment where all of a sudden Trump is sort of like letting it all go. Okay, so and trying to keep it calm, and then he insults JD a little bit. He calls him, listen, JD, what securities do you have? Like this kind of thing, which apparently, according to precedent, when you're doing a public press conference, you keep it squeaky clean, by the book. You don't get into those kind of like push back and forth conversations in front of the media. You do that all in private. And he was trying to do this in public, taking out pictures, wanting them to demonstrate that they agree with him on Putin and all these things. And when he pushed JD to say, what security guarantees do you have? And then JD like pushed back. Trump's like, ooh, you know what? Let's do this instead.
It was like getting yelled at by an adult at shul when you're a kid.
Yeah.
Like you really saw what he's like behind closed doors. Which it was pretty scary.
It's intense. All of a sudden you're like, I am uncomfortable.
It was like angry dad at the Shabbos table energy.
He has that power. Remember what he said to the governor of Maine, who wasn't going to implement his no men and women sports executive order? Where's Maine? The governor, you're not going to comply? You're not going to come? Yeah, we're going to follow the law. Well, we are the law. We are the federal law. Okay, you're not going to comply. Well, you know what? And then he does this, and you're like, oh, he's intimidating.
Yeah,
he has the power.
It was even more than that because this didn't seem like performative as much. It seemed like he was negotiating like a real estate deal. Mm-hmm. Like it wasn't like it wasn't like pompous or like performative. It was like no, like this is how I think about deals, and you don't have leverage, and that's all I care about. That's all I see, leverage, and you don't have it, and like I can treat you like garbage when you don't have leverage.
And you see Zylensky immediately being like, I totally screwed this up. He turtles. I know, I am. Did you even say thank you? I did. Of course I said a minute. And like he did. It was like.
I was like, what do you do? What do you do in that position?
That is a superpower. That's a power that like you either can have or you don't have in that moment. And you saw it happen when he's like giving him that spanking. You don't have the cards. You're gambling with World War III millions. And he just starts.
Yeah. It was pretty. I mean, I'm obviously no like American history expert, but like it felt like a bit of a reset on
Russia, Ukraine,
on like the Obama Biden neoliberal
way of doing things,
way of like appeasement, peace through appeasement, like
right.
Like whether or not like you respect me, I'm the American president.
Mm-hmm.
Like that was a powerful thing that JD said. I thought like you're in the Oval Office, you will respect the American president.
Yes.
I don't know. In my adult life, I haven't heard anyone talk like that.
No.
So that was something.
Yes. And then I realized when you think about it, the guy's sitting there and he has, regardless of where your stance is on like who you sympathize with and all of that, like he has been given like millions and millions and millions of dollars in aid and weapons from the United States.
Billions,
183
right? billion.
Is that what it is? And so he's sitting there, and to say anything else but like thank you and being grateful for that support, and trying to like be like, well, what it just when you think of it like that, he's like, what security guarantee do you have that is not going? What do you? You're like, are you serious right now? It's like the spoiled kid coming in and being like, why like fetching. Yeah. And you're like, oh boy.
When you see those numbers, America has given $183 billion in aid. And I know it's a little more complicated. It's not just like cash that they give them. Yeah. And then I think Europe has given $143 billion. Mm-hmm. And you're a little bit like, why have we given more than Europe has?
Yeah, it's interesting.
We have less to lose. And it is complicated, but it's also not complicated a little bit. And in those moments that kind of comes out.
Last thing we'll talk about, did you watch any of the State of the Union?
I watched the first 20 minutes.
Yeah. First of all, I will say this, the Democrats are so pathetic. They look so pathetic.
Did the guy who get kicked out? Did he walk out willingly? Because that's BS.
He did walk. I mean, the security came to escort him out.
If you're going to go as far as to get kicked out, you have to be dragged out.
I mean, he did get kicked out. The guy approached him, so instead of getting dragged out, he walked out.
He should have. If the Democrats had any balls, he would get dragged out. You know what I'm saying? Like, you just walk out. Like, I think that's their whole play of like, we're going to act really tough, but at the end we'll just walk out.
Yeah. Also, he said, "You don't have a mandate. You don't have a mandate." He clearly had planned to do it, and he like jumped the gun. Just it was all a plan.
Yeah,
he, like that's the one thing you definitely has a mandate.
Did he say anything of note?
He just kept screaming, "You have a mandate. You have a mandate. You don't have a mandate."
No. I'm saying Trump in the speech.
I'm still getting through the whole State of the Union, but it just it struck me as, first of all, a few things stood out to me when he mentioned all the Doge waste. Did you see that part where he goes, like, for $80 billion to LGBTQI research in Zimbabwe? He starts naming all the things. Then he said something really funny. He's like $4.2 million to funding in Lesotho. Nobody knows what that is. No one knows. And the room is cracking up. Nobody knows what that is. And then it got me thinking, like, as he names all these programs, in like diversity, equity, and inclusion in Burma. This is real. And then I got to thinking, the Zionist in me was like, all these people who've been screaming from the rooftops in the America First movement about, like, the anti-Israel woke right, America First. Stop the foreign aid to Israel. We don't need to have our tax dollars wasted on Israel. And it's like, it's not about waste for you. Like, of all the things to be up in arms about, there's a case to be made about supporting Israel. There's a case to be made about not. But look, like, if we're going to start cutting, there's plenty of things we could agree upon and that are no-brainers. And you're not even looking into that. You don't care that that's there. You haven't even said anything. Not that you wouldn't agree to cut it if it's brought to your attention, but you don't care to bring it to your attention for a very specific reason, you know? So it's like calling the bluff of all these people who say it's all about waste and efficiency. Right. It's like, okay, well, do you realize how many things could come before in priority list?
Right. You're saying now, you understand now because of Doge.
Yeah, and you're just looking at all these things, and I'm like, isn't that funny? Like, even when I debated Dave Smith, he's like, if we have to start cutting foreign aid to one country, I would pick Israel. One country. Why should my tax dollars be funding this? You know, and I get it. He's morally offended by what's going on, but at the same time, like, can we all agree that a lot of this stuff has no validity? And you don't even care to talk about it or think about it or, you know, inquire. It calls the bluff a little bit.
One thing he said destroyed my day, I think 2 days ago.
Who?
Trump. He talked about crypto reserves. Mm-hmm. And like in 2021, a friend of mine told me to buy this coin called Cardano. Whatever. So it was at like 0.03 cents, whatever.
So you make a quick buck.
I bought like $4,000 worth of it. So I had a lot of it.
$4,000 worth
at the time. Yeah, at the time I had a lot of it, and then you know, crypto went bust, and I figured I just lost that money, and then during the boom, Trump got reelected. And crypto went crazy, and I checked back in at my Cardano, and I went from like, you know, minus 4,000 to like plus $400. I like made it back up past zero. So I was like, for the first time in all of my crypto life, I'm gonna sell it. I actually didn't lose money. Huge. I sold it. I made $400, and then Trump made this announcement that he's gonna do crypto reserves, and the two currencies he wants to do are Solana and Cardano.
What does that mean?
This random ass coin. It means that it's at like $1 now. Who knows? Maybe it'll go up to like $10.
Do you think you would have made millions if he said that?
I wouldn't have made millions, and who knows what'll happen. But if he actually does that, it's possible it might have been millions.
No,
it's possible.
No.
It's not too late. It's only $1. You can still buy it if you wanted. Right now it wouldn't be worth millions. Right now it's still pretty much at the same price.
Yeah, I know.
But when I saw that word in the tweet, my stomach dropped. And
because
I was
you're like, this could have been my golden goose.
Just never sell, ever sell anything ever.
I thought about it.
I hope it doesn't.
I'll never forget walking by in like 2010 or 2013, a Bitcoin mining shop in the city.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, what is that? Bitcoin. Each one worth like 0.03 cents. Even if I just bought 50 cents worth.
Yeah.
What if I bought 1,000 of them for like, $100?
Yeah.
But it's meaningless. It's
you
the lottery.
You would have lost it by now.
Bitcoin?
You wouldn't have had it. You would have had to have it on like a hard drive or something.
Right, yeah.
You wouldn't have even had it, if that makes you feel better.
It does. But
it'd be somewhere in a Boston garbage dump.
It's curious to know where crypto goes and where Gary Vee has gone since the whole crypto collapse.
People, it's so funny. People just disappear sometimes, like from your feed. Tim Ferriss disappears for years at a time. Gary Vee has completely disappeared from me.
Yeah, in my feed. Shows up a little bit here and there.
I think he made $400 million on his NFTs.
Gary Vee?
Yeah. Wow. Say anything you want about Gary. He understands collectibles markets. He timed it at the height of the market.
Sure.
If it was any earlier, he would have made less. If it was any later, he would have made less.
I just wonder why I hadn't seen him front and center in the culture. I think it's because everything's become so politically dominant, and he's not in a political, like politics has become so much mainstream culture is politics. And in times like this, I didn't see him that much in the Trump era either. Maybe, I don't know. I
think there's that. I think he also, whether or not this is his message, he exists in the get rich quick universe, and this isn't a get rich quick economy. And so people are less interested in him. I know his message isn't get rich quick, but that's his
audience.
That's his world. Yeah.
Audience.
So when people aren't looking for how do I build my financial empire, he has less relevance. When the economy is not booming.
On the content side of things, all the Colin and Samir stuff and Jack Conte interview, I have to watch the whole thing. But I am curious what social Web 4 or social media 2.7.0, whatever the next thing is. It's hard to there's nothing front and center. I guess AI, but I don't really know what the next TikTok isn't what it was. It's there. It has its weird drama. Yeah. But I wonder, I feel like we're in between things right now.
It's going to be a lot of AI generated content. It's going to feel, as gross as things feel now, I think it's going to start to feel much weirder and grosser. And odder. Things are going to be very odd for a long time.
Yeah.
The stuff you're just seeing is going to be very odd. And yeah, it's going to be a lot of AI is serving you AI generated content. And you're just going to be it's going to be a weird feeling, I think, for a long time to come.
There's some things I think about that we forgot about, like Apple VR. The
headset.
What's it called?
Apple Vision. I think the Apple Vision.
The Apple Vision Pro.
Yeah.
I haven't heard about it. I don't know a single person who owns it.
Yeah.
Do you?
No.
Innovation using your hands. Don't know a single person.
The whole metaverse people stopped talking about because when crypto went down, they stopped talking about the metaverse.
Why?
Because all of crypto was always it's a technology without a use case, and people were just using it to trade on and get rich. And when you couldn't trade on it and get rich, no one had any interest in it. There's no application for it.
No.
So no one wants to be in the metaverse. The metaverse was driven by crypto in some capacity, I think, because that's what you spent there. That's why, because you spent crypto in the metaverse, and you had an avatar that was an NFT. That's and you bought NFTs in the metaverse. That's what it was. And then when NFTs and crypto went down, and everyone was like, "What are we doing here?"
Yeah, and I just haven't seen anything, and I don't know a single person who owns an Apple Vision Pro. So I'm interested. Just I feel like we're in between tech innovations.
Let me pitch this idea to you.
Did you have an idea you wanted?
I had an idea. Yeah, and I don't get to pitch it. Have you seen those weird AI videos? I'm in a weird AI algorithm now, I guess, on Instagram. But you can make short films now.
Pompeii, Last Day in Pompeii, kind of thing.
Something like that. Sure,
I've seen that where you see somebody's feet and it's
I just saw that right on the black flag. Exactly.
I love those.
So this is my short film. It's Elon Musk at the mothership in Austin, and he's walking like very confidently down the halls of the mothership to go hang out with all his friends in the back room. And he opens up the back room and he cracks open the door, and through the crack he can see like Joe Rogan, Theo Von, Tim Dillon, Andrew Schultz, Andrew Santino Babili, all sitting around, and he's really excited because he gets to go hang out with all his new cool friends. And they don't realize he's there, and he basically overhears them all just making fun of him, like, oh, did you see Elon's thing? And they're all going around in a circle just blasting Elon, not realizing that he's listening. And then Elon gets like very, very sad, and he closes the door, and he walks back down the hall, and he goes outside, and he gets on a rocket ship and just flies away.
That's the whole thing.
That's the whole thing. Is there something there where like Elon thinks he's cool, but the only reason anyone wants to hang out with him is because he's the richest man in the world?
There is a sadness to Elon that you're tapping into.
It's not just the sadness. It's his like trying to be cool. His being cool only works if you're the richest man in the world.
He's not just the richest. He's like the most accomplished and successul. But I think you're picking up on this scene that you see crystallized in your head of him being like, "Oh, okay, I guess that's how it is," and he walks away with like the default frown, like,
"Yeah,
I guess I meant to be alone." I think you're picking up on something very real in him and around him.
Yeah,
like, can he really connect to people, and do they really think he's cool? And like he's like trying to be in that, like trying to be normal, trying to be human.
Yeah.
You're picking up on something. I think the way it manifests in your head is that you have like this weird, dark, twisted, like thing. I think if you made that, it's not a complete story or thought, which a lot of your thoughts sometimes
it's
aren't.
just like a short. It's just like a short AI. It's just a short thing. It's not like a.
Yeah, I think it needs another tag. Like they all come out of the green room. They're like, Elon, where'd he go? Like something like, oh, where is he? Like, something like that. That adds another sadness to it, where it's like, meaning it's too simple to say they're all just teasing and making fun of him. That turns them into these like simple bullies. Like maybe there's something more to it than that. That adds another sadness to it. Like he abandons it, but they also, like, there's something more. I don't know. I always see like a tag without, like, it leaves you being like, huh? I don't know.
Okay.
Maybe like what happens after they leave the green room?
Well, you can't, with this AI stuff, it's hard to do very like intricate interactions with people. So I'm saying you'd want to keep it very, very simple.
Mm-hmm. Or it's like years later and he's been on Mars and he builds a civilization, but like, where'd you go, man? We were just kidding. But I don't know if that's...
I don't know. Well, you're going to do all the voices, so whether you like it or not.
All right.
You're signed up for it.
I kind of know what you're tapping into, though. This there's something sad and something incredible about him, but there's this like...
It's not just him. It's the... Did you see him on Joe Rogan?
Yeah, a little bit of clips.
So I saw at the beginning, they're just kind of joking around for 10 minutes, and you're like, what does Joe Rogan have in common with this guy? There's nothing... They're not... This is such a weird...
Success.
It's so weird. I know, but even Joe Rogan's success has nothing to do with Elon Musk. Like, no, but the way they're laughing and joking, you're just like in any other context, without Elon's success, like Joe would not want to be hanging out with him. Like, he's not funny. He's not funny at all.
No,
he's not. Like, and it's. But like Joe's laughing at everything he's saying, and it's like I
have to see what you're saying. But
watch the first 2 minutes.
Personality gelling, and he said the first podcast he had with him, I remember saying it was really hard. He talked about how difficult it was, like as a conversation. But also, it's hard to say. Without Elon's success, he just wouldn't be Elon, because what makes Elon successful is his brilliance, and that makes him fascinating. So you're making it about status.
No, but when you're on a camp, when you're hanging out with someone, your success doesn't matter. It's you're just hanging out.
Yeah, it's a vibe.
It's a vibe, and his vibe is so off.
Yeah,
It's so off.
I know what you mean.
But every time he's off, you're like, oh, he owns Tesla. He's off, but yeah, he's really rich. Oh yeah, but he's brilliant. He's a genius. It's like you're always backing it up with like, why is this guy laughing at this thing? It's not that funny. Oh yeah, he's Elon Musk. I'll laugh too. This is fun.
But that's I kind of get it, you know.
Yeah, but then.
But don't you get it?
No, of course I get it.
Of course I get it. It's something you're kind of in awe of a little bit.
But the joke is though that when he's not in the room, you don't have to be in awe of it, and you can just make fun of it.
I know what you're tapping into.
You'll see. All of you will see. All of you will see.
Yeah. All right. Well, this was a fun one. Let's go. I think there's some good stuff to come out of it. And we'll see you all next time. Thanks for listening, everybody.
Good. Thank you.
You know, and it's been a real pleasure.
Bye.
Michael. So you're saying that it's the reason they want to kill me, if they're going to kill me, they're not going to be able to because I can get to Mars. And that's Tommy's house, Elon Musk style. Thanks for watching.